Hashem na'aseh v'natzliach. Shur Torah, Bruchim Habayim, all the online fans, Baruch Hashem. We're back here on our Tuesday night Eichah the Mashiach, the Era of Mashiach series based on the Sefer by Rabbi Yochanan Wasserman, Alav Shalom. Tonight's shiur will be for a refuah shlema for our dear friend Rav Avraham ben Zion ben Fega bat Aviva. Also for refuah shlema for Reuven Natan ben Sarah, Avi Mori David ben Esriya, my dear brother Oshri ben Doris bat Jora, Aviva bat Sarah, Angela bat Aviva, David ben Aviva, Michael ben Aviva, Rabbanit Levana bat Sarah, Sarah bat Anat, Rav Ephraim ben Shulamit, Olivia bat Almas, Yitro ben Avraham, Talia bat Sarah, Michal bat Yael, Batya bat Sarah, Orit bat Ilana, Serach bat Batya, Jonas ben Sherry Haley, and also for a Atzlacha Rabba for Marsha bat Julie, and Shaul ben Farzane, Yitro ben Sarah, Oshri ben Doris, Gabi ben Doris, Elad ben Doris, David ben Esriya, and all of Am Yisrael, especially the ones and Rachel bat Leah, and all of Am Yisrael Ezrat Hashem who have a refuah shlema, atzlacha rabba, b'chol ma'aseh yedeihem, and especially the ones that Baruch Hashem help us with all of the wonderful things that we're doing. We have a update we released just yesterday, a new video, really a short video, that 11 minutes, that I think every Jew, every lover of Israel should watch to see, on one end, the privilege that most people are living in right now in comparison to some people, some Jews that are in Israel, where they unfortunately went through a very difficult last several years. Some crook developer took a bunch of money from all these different people to build properties and abandoned the project in the middle, and then fled, they say, to America or to somewhere else with all the money, and pretty much completely destroyed this community, because now none of the people are able to get regular mortgages in order to fix and complete the houses. So many of these people you'll see in the video, they all live in broken houses where, you know, the ceilings are peeling and the windows are broken, and it's caused major tragedies in the community over the last few years. We've been trying to help them over this last year or so, but that's just a scratch on the surface. It's been, unfortunately, broken up marriages, at least one suicide, lots and lots of poverty. So, you know, it's breaks your heart to see that there are Jewish people that, on one end, are that wicked and that do it to their fellow Jews. On another end, it breaks your heart that there is, unfortunately, such a decree on Am Yisrael to suffer like that. The situation in the world is continuing to deteriorate, where the ignorance about Torah and Emet, unfortunately, is not changing. If anything, there's more confusion today than there was yesterday, and there was more confusion yesterday than the day before. The confusion continues, and it's really, when someone asks me, what do you think is the single biggest problem that you have in Judaism on the application we have, I think yesterday I answered the question. The answer is a simple answer: ignorance. People simply are ignorant today about what the truth is about God, about His Torah, about the purpose of your life. Ignorance is running rampant. And that's the biggest problem we have today, because if people only knew how beautiful and delicious our Torah is, if people only knew how the Torah is an obligation and not a suggestion, how the mitzvot are an obligation and not a suggestion, how anything that you do that's contrary to the Torah is guaranteed to fail. If people simply knew this, everyone would do tshuva by the millions. But unfortunately today we have such high level of ignorance that it's very easy to confuse this generation with mistaken teachings, because people that don't know what they don't know, and therefore they're easy to confuse them. It's easy to mislead them. This is really no different than what the Zionists did, some 100 years ago, and even a little less, and even till this day, but nonetheless a much bigger extent at the time of Herzl and his followers, where you had an enormous amount of confusion everywhere as a result of lack of information, lack of knowledge, lack of dedication to the Torah. And unfortunately, even decent, righteous people were fooled by these snakes. Today, the Zionists have a different tone, a different hat, but nonetheless the same heretical message. And that's why it's very hard to find kosher material to study on the internet or even buying a book. People constantly send me different things to evaluate. Is this kosher? Is that kosher? I mean, there's not enough time in a day to review everything, but I can tell you that the overwhelming majority of the information that most people think is kosher is not kosher. As far as videos and different types of media and shows, I just saw today somebody showed me maybe almost a month ago, asked me to review something. I finally did today. Something that's in essence is presenting itself as a Jewish teachings for children specifically about Torah. Why is it specifically for children? How do you know it's for children? It's cartoon. It's a different media. So I finally got to a point. I was, let's review this. I see a 30-second video. Already there's a few problems. It's mentioning words that you're not really supposed to mention for little kids, but it's kind of odd. So let's give it the whole video a chance. I end up watching a whole 11-minute video and regretting the day I was born. They took the Torah, they took certain aspects of it, and they literally modernized it to such an extent you're not really sure whether you're watching a pornography film or you're watching a shiur about a video about something relevant to the Torah. Not really sure. What they mentioned lust and things of that nature so many times that you say to yourself, wait, didn't you just say this is for children? Why would my 6-year-old want to learn about different things like this? Now, to teach your kid about brit and not to touch and things of that nature is no problem. But what does that have to do with this cartoon over here? And that's the problem. Today people are so warped in their mind, they have no idea where is right, where is left, what to teach, what not to teach, where to go, where not to go. People think that if you teach the public tikkun brit, that's wrong. If you don't teach anything, that's right. And everyone is confused. They have no idea who's what and who's where. A few times you had people call us and ask us, oh, I got the CD in the mail, and it says tikkun brit, but I have children, teenagers in my house. I don't want them learning things like this. I said, actually, they're the ones that are supposed to learn this, because he goes, no, let them grow up and get old and maybe learn about it when they're married. I said, if you wait until they're married, it's already going to be too late. In fact, it's already too late now if they're already 13, 14. But that's the problem. If you tell people this, they're confused. They're not really sure. Why? Because they don't learn this stuff in yeshiva. On the other hand, if you tell them things that are completely heretical, completely against the Torah, but they'll say, no, maybe it's a different opinion. There's a lot of opinions. Hence the reason why, unless you are going to hear something from the sources by someone who has Yirat Shamayim, who understands that this is what you're supposed to teach, this is what you're supposed to say, you're gonna be led astray. And that's why, Baruch Hashem, since we can't really trust ourselves either, what do? We trust the Sfarim. We trust the sages. We simply read what the sages say in simple ways, in a way that any person can understand. So anyone that wants to look at the letter, you have it on our website. You see it in the ebook section. You can download this whole sefer for free. On the other hand, you want to see some of the commentaries that we bring, whether it's from the Gemara or from the Poskim or anywhere else, we, Baruch Hashem, try our hardest to mention the verses. You could just go open up the books and see exactly that this is what it says. That way you know that this has legs to stand on, not just a leg, where it's a little bit of truth but complete lie. Unfortunately, today, Rabotai Yekarim, we're in a situation where if you do not do some legwork yourself to double check what you're learning, what your wife is learning, what your husband is learning, what your children are learning, it is very, very likely that you're learning things that are against the Torah, and it's very likely that you're going to be meshubash. Meshubash means someone that's a little bit of a defect spiritually. A little bit of a spiritual defect. He goes to shul, he prays, he puts on tefillin, but once in a while he'll smoke a cigarette or look at his phone on Shabbat. You know, he'll keep Shabbat, he'll know all the halachot by heart, he has a shtreimel on and everything else, but he's in a cash advance business, lending money to people in order to kill them practically. You know, unethical in business. Or countless other subjects, other issues, other problems. Rabotai, we're in a situation today where the Ikvetat Mashiach, the Era of Mashiach that Rav Wasserman has been teaching us for the last several months, is literally showing itself in front of our eyes, happening, but it's not the bombs that we're scared of. It's not the viruses that we're scared of. It's not the terrorists that we're scared of. It's not the presidents that we're scared of. It's unfortunately the misteachings, the misleadings, the liars, the missionaries, both Jewish and non-Jewish. Those are the ones that we're scared of. Why? Because unfortunately you get a lot more bees with honey than you can if you're trying to swap them down. And this is what's happening. The missionaries, the misleaders, the Zionists, the anti-Torah, the heretics, they're getting millions of people to follow them. How? With honey. They tell people whatever they want to hear, in a way they want to hear it, in the media they want to hear it, in a place they want to hear. And what ends up happening, since people don't verify things, don't double check things, you have an entire generation of confused people. Entire generation of confused people. And unfortunately, sometimes those confused people are very religious people that learn in a kollel and learn in yeshiva and everything else, but perhaps they didn't double check certain things and just assumed certain things that were said were right. And they ended up living an entire section of their life completely against Hashem without knowing it. So the Ikvedat Mashiach, the Era of Mashiach that Rav Wasserman is telling us, is not really spending so much time telling us about the bombs that are going to happen before Mashiach comes, or the big war of Gog and Magog, where 2/3 of the world are going to be destroyed, like the prophet Zechariah says in chapter 14, or all of the horrific events and death and annihilations that will happen, like it says in Ezekiel chapter 38. He's not really spending so much time going into that. What is he saying? He has spent the last several months telling us, first and foremost, you should know, the only reason why we're in this place, where things are not going to be good before Mashiach comes, there's going to be birth pangs, similar to a pregnancy. Right before the woman gives birth, it's an enormous amount of pain. And the reality is, the only reason we're in such a situation where that's what's going to happen, and that's what's happening before Mashiach comes, is because of those shepherds. And he has mentioned it time and time again. I was just thinking now, instead of calling this series Era of Mashiach, we should call it the series of wars, because every week there's a new war on somebody else that's violating Divrei Chazal, that's violating Divrei Chachamim, that's going against the words of the Chachamim, going against exactly what Rav Wasserman is saying. And by the way, there's another one today. Stay tuned to find out who. Unfortunately, Rabotai, it looks like we're trying to pick wars every week with somebody else, but that's not the case. It's that you read what Rav Wasserman said, in the name of the Chafetz Chaim, in the name of the Rishonim, in the name of the Gemara, in the name of the Tanakh, in the name of Moshe Rabbeinu, in the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. You see everything that everyone is saying, and then you have some Joe Schmo clown today doing exactly the opposite at the time that we're reading it. How are we not going to say something? You have to be a pathological liar to avoid saying, oh, by the way, everything we just read, this guy, he's doing it, but I'm going to keep quiet about it. You can't help yourself. You have to still call things as they are. Why? Because it's not just about learning. It's also about preserving our nation. It's not just teaching us. It's also about preserving what we have, because if you get somebody, say your son or your daughter or somebody in a restaurant, and tell them, listen, make me a beautiful meal. And they go and they toil and they work on it for hours and hours and hours in cooking. You smell the aroma and everything else. And then they make you this beautiful piece of meat, and it's got rice and it's got vegetables and it's got all types of wonderful colors. And then right after they put it on, in front of you and you're about to munch, oh, hold on a second, we got to put a topping. And the topping is an entire civilization of different worms alive. They put on top of it, hey, bon appetit. So what do you mean? What did you do here? What did you do here? Why'd you ruin this meal? It took you 3 hours to prepare. He goes, no, what do you mean I ruined it? I just put some worms on it, the toppings. He goes, yeah, but who eats worms? What am I, anteater? What am I, an animal? I'm a bird? Who eats this stuff? Oh, it's delicious, senor, it's delicious. Delicious for you, not for me. I don't eat worms. That's the problem. Today we have a lot of people that are eating worms, not just literally, but also figuratively. They learn Torah, they go to yeshiva, they watch shiurim online, they read certain books, and they don't realize that yes, although the base, the foundation, parts of it have a lot of truth. It talks about Moshe Rabbeinu, it talks about Avraham Avinu, it talks about the parasha, it talks about the Nevi'im and the halacha and so on and so forth. But unfortunately, there's worms everywhere. Why? Because the speaker, the author, the person that's delivering the message added some of their own personal opinion. Personal, modernized, heretical opinion to it, and that's unfortunately what ends up happening. That's what ends up happening. People end up adding their opinion because people love to hear themselves speak. They love to hear themselves bring a new insight and the type of respect they'll get as a result of this new insight, even if the insight is not even original. Nonetheless, they steal somebody else's idea, they modernize it a little bit, they repackage it. It came from China, they now put USA on it. It came from India, they now put Brazil on it, and they tell you it's theirs. And what ends up happening is that you, poor people, end up eating worms. You end up learning things that are heretical, that are against the Torah, without even knowing it. Without even knowing it. Not a week goes by without me getting more phone calls or messages from different people that have learned Torah their whole life but never knew the significance of wasting seed. Never knew the significance of not rebuking a fellow Jew when you see him violating the Torah openly. Never knew the significance of these things. And unfortunately, Rabotai Ikarim, if we don't do something about it, our quiet, our ignorance, our violation of the Torah, didn't end well in the past. This is why Rav Wasserman put this book together. He wasn't really talking so much to his generation, because his generation was practically a lost cause. The war already began. The disaster already struck. It was already there. He wrote this Sefer for us. He wrote this Sefer for us to prepare ourselves to know how to deal with the circumstances that we're in today, in the era of Mashiach, before the Mashiach finally arrives. Because it's not going to be a pretty party like some people think when they drive around in their trucks and the big microphones telling you Mashiach now. It won't be like that, I promise you. I promise you it won't be like that. And the reason why is because that contradicts all of the prophets. Such a event contradicts all of the prophets. There's unfortunately going to be a difficult time. And that's what Chazal tells us in the Gemara Masekhet Sanhedrin, where it talks about how the sages knew that the climatic point of the world, the extraordinary part of the world, the highest level of Kedusha, highest level of sanctification of Hashem's name will happen after Mashiach comes. So everyone wants him to come. It's one of our 13 principles of faith, is to believe that the Mashiach can come at any given day. But needless to say, they said one after another, I want him to come, but not during my lifetime. Why? Because they were scared to death of the world the situation of the world. Not the bombs, not the missiles, not the tanks, but the spiritual status of the world is going to be difficult. So why do we hope for Mashiach to come if it's going to be so horrible? Because again, when Mashiach finally comes, it's going to be the climatic point of the world, the sanctification of Hashem's name to the highest point, a point where Hashem will be the one and only God in the world and everyone will say Amen. So we want it to happen, but we have to make sure that we're the few that will survive that time and the time before it, the time that we're in today. So Rav Wasserman has told us time and time again that the reason why we're in this situation of a spiritual ignorance to the point of catastrophe is because of the shepherds. Now then you're going to ask, okay, but let's say you have the information. You tell it to a lot of people. What then? Truth is, a lot of people that hear this information do tshuva. They change their ways. They start keeping Shabbat. They start keeping kosher. They start changing their lives. Baruch Hashem. But unfortunately, some do not do tshuva, even after hearing the truth. Why would somebody that hears the truth, agrees that it's true, stay a wicked person nonetheless? Desires. When a person is addicted to their desires and they know that in order for them to get closer to Hashem, they have to abandon their desires, they have to abandon their addiction. Many times they simply are not willing because they think they're not able. It's not that they're not able. They're not willing because they don't think that they're not able. In essence, they believe that they failed before they even started, and therefore whatever they believe in is right. And that's the key, is to know that the words of the sages are not recommendations. The words of the sages are literally instructions from HaKadosh Baruch Hu in order to survive. Anyone that's going to survive at the time of Mashiach has to be Chared L'Hashem, Charedi. Not just Charedi because of all the different names of different communities, Hasidish, Litvish, all that stuff. No, Charedi meaning Chared against, for Hashem, to be zealous for Hashem, to be glued to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to be someone that chases the mitzvot as if it's the only thing that exists in the world. You may wear black and white, you may not wear black and white, but you're needless to say you'll be modest. You may wear a kisur rosh with a mitpachat, you may wear a kisur rosh with a hat, you may wear a kisur rosh with a, let's say if it exists in the world, a kosher wig. But the point being is that in order to survive the times of Mashiach, you have to be chared. You have to be someone that's glued to Hashem, someone that chases the mitzvot. As a side note, I don't believe that there is a kosher wig in the world, unless it's a wig from 40, 50 years ago. But I give the kav zchut for many tzadikot that still have not overcome this desire of wearing a wig, and they're glued to it. That doesn't mean that they're wicked people. It means that they have a situation, they have a mistake, just like the rest of us have mistakes, have situations that it's tough for us to overcome. Needless to say, the point is that there's many other mitzvot that we have to also fulfill in the Torah, many other things we need to work on in the Torah, and through those mitzvot, through those tikkunim that we do, Be'ezrat Hashem will have the strength to overcome these other desires that are more difficult for us to overcome right off the bat. Either way, Rav Wasserman continues in his letter, where last time he told us that this whole strategy, the whole strategy that Am Yisrael used at the time before World War II was wrong. How so? He said they, first and foremost, were aggressive against the Goyim, calling out the Goyim, telling the Goyim all types of things with aggressive, as if we have an army just as big as theirs. Now Herzl wasn't talking about a spiritual army. He was anti-Torah. Ben Gurion was not talking about a spiritual army. He was anti-Torah. All of those Zionists, more or less, were anti-Torah, and many of them were even converted to Christianity. They were missionaries. But, so they weren't talking about having an army, but they believed that they have power somehow. Through what? Newspapers, articles, thesis papers, meetings in the Congress, and all types of nonsense. They thought that those weapons were just as powerful as the Nazi tanks, just as powerful as the anti-Semitic knives. And Rav Wasserman says this is the wrong strategy. Better yet, the whole goal that they had was wrong by simply forcing themselves into a land that Hashem gave Am Yisrael, gave our forefathers Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, but took it back until the Mashiach was supposed to come. And to force ourselves into that land. Now that we have the land, Baruch Hashem, we have the land. But in essence, in reality, we weren't supposed to force ourselves into it at the time. But now that we have it, b'diavad. Either way, Herzl and his friends wanted to force ourselves into the land. And what Rav Wasserman brought last week is psukim, verses from the prophet Daniel, verses from Proverbs, verses from different places in the Gemara, countless different places, Midrash Rabbah, in the Chumash, Parashat Vayikra, countless places talking and discussing how Am Yisrael made a vow, a deal with Hashem, how they're not going to go and conquer the land of Israel. Why? They're going to wait for him to give it to us. So Rav Wasserman simply said this whole strategy is not only wrong because your way is wrong, of being aggressive against Esau. Even Yaakov, that was strong, wasn't aggressive against Esau. But you're going to be aggressive against Esau. You and your 25 different pens and pencils, you're going to be aggressive against the weapons of Esau, the tanks, the horses, the guns, the bombs. You're going to be aggressive against them. Not only that is wrong and it's against the Torah, but on top of it, your whole goal is wrong of simply forcing yourself into a land that Hashem literally told us, don't go there until I give it to you, and don't worry, I'm going to give it to you. The whole premise was wrong. But unfortunately, many people followed it. And till this day, many people are victims to it. Most people are not educated about the real damage that the Zionists have and continue to cause Am Yisrael. Most people, especially in the modern Orthodox world, call themselves, Zionists, because they don't believe that the Zionists did bad, or better yet, even the ones that know a little bit about how bad the real original Zionists were, they said, yeah, they were bad, but the people today are better. It's like saying it's just something that baffles you. It's like, wait a minute, they follow the same rule book. Why would they be better? No, because now they understand, and people give the Reshaim a lot of benefit of the doubt. Assuming they're best. In reality, their next door neighbor, there's a tzaddik, tzaddikah, good people, but parked in their spot, automatically they assume the worst. The Reshaim, they assume the best for them. That's one of the mistakes. Why? Because when you have something already planted in your head, it's very hard to remove it just by itself. You can't remove a lie out of your head without replacing it with some bit of truth. And unfortunately today, unless somebody starts learning authentic, legitimate Torah, it is impossible for them to do tshuva. It's impossible for them to clean their mind spiritually and have an ability to see the world clearly as it is. This whole politically correct, liberal world that we live in cannot be fixed without an enormous amount of authentic, legitimate musar from the Torah that is hard to hear, difficult to swallow, but nonetheless is 100% true. Impossible to fix it. And unless we flood the world with more and more Torah, things will only deteriorate. Why? Because just as many that are doing better and doing tshuva and doing great, unfortunately, there are many that are falling off. And it's arguable whether as many are joining as they are leaving. And again, it's all because of the ignorance that we have. Many people in the modern Orthodox world today, unfortunately, live in such a life that they're not very different than conservative Jews were just 50, 60 years ago. 50, 60 years ago, the conservative movement was observing Shabbat, but decided that they're going to stop observing Shabbat by allowing people to drive on Shabbat to the shul in order to increase the size of the kehillah and also their pockets in order to do that. And as you see, 50, 60, 70 years later, the conservative movement has no resemblance whatsoever to real authentic Judaism, with head rabbis being openly gay, nobody keeping Shabbat, kosher being questionable, whether it's even in the house at all, needless to say outside, and countless other things like intermarriage and so on. Unfortunately, the modern Orthodox world has deteriorated the same. And part of the reason is their addiction to Zionism and its teachings, where any young kid that went to the modern Orthodox world wants to build himself a name, doesn't really know what he's going to do with his communications degree, and from college that he spent $250,000 on, doesn't know what he's going to do with his English degree that his parents spent $250,000 on. He wants to get himself a name. What does he do? He starts a YouTube channel and decides to start talking about, Zionism and loving Israel and unity with the Arabs, unity with ISIS, unity with Saddam Hussein, unity with Mustafa, unity with Chris, unity with Satan, unity with Kafakela, unity with everybody. Unity with everybody. That's what they want. They want Achdut. Achdut they call it. Achdut's a very popular in the world. Unfortunately, Rabotai, Rav Avigdor Miller. Rav Avigdor Miller over 10 years ago wrote it in one of his ma'amarim. It was actually spoken in a lecture. Says this Achdut, that the Reform, the Conservative, and the Modern Orthodox are constantly preaching, is only going to be an Achdut of everybody going to Gehinnom together. Rav Avigdor Miller, it's like prophecy. Prophecy. At the time he said it, Modern Orthodox wasn't the same as it was now. Today, unfortunately, things have deteriorated rapidly. Why? For the things that we're going to discuss today. So, Rav Wasserman has warned us time and time again about these shepherds, these teachers, these false teachers, these liars, these manipulators, and so on and so forth. What is he going to tell us now in the next part? He's telling us that the strategy of these shepherds, the strategy of these Zionists, the strategy of all of these different types of leaders of preaching Achdut and forcing ourselves into the country, these are all things that are against the Torah. These are all things that are against the teachings of our sages, all of them. So now he tells us the last part of one before last part of the section about how to deal with the exile, how we're supposed to manage ourselves. אלה הן בקיצור הוראות התורה בדבר יחסרנו על הגויים, ועל פי ההוראות האלה נהגו היהודים בכל הזמנים עד הדורות האחרונים, עד שקמו לנו מנהיגים ומסרבים לדעת התורה ואת עצותיה, והם מנהלים את המדיניות היהודית בדיוק בכיוון הנגדי. Rav Wasserman says, these are briefly, everything we just discussed for the first 30 minutes, these are briefly the decisions of the Torah in regards to our attitude to the nations. Meaning how all the things we discussed, not pushing ourselves where we don't belong, not being aggressive against Esau or Ishmael. If you have to defend yourself, you defend yourself, but there's no point of picking fights. This is our attitude, how to deal with the nations. Just like when Yaakov went to meet Esau in last week's parasha, what did he say? Adoni Esau. He says, my master Esau. Not that he believed that Esau was his master, his God, or anything like that, but meaning he gave him some respect. Why? I don't want to fight with you. There's no point. Nothing good's going to come out of it. Why? The real fight's going to happen at the end. The Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to take care of the whole thing. What do I need to get my hands dirty? What do I need to get my hands dirty? All I need to do is survive. How do I survive? Learning Torah. So he says, Adoni Esau, here's some gifts. What do you like? You like chocolate? Here's some chocolate. You like some sheep? Here's some sheep. You like some gold? Here's some gold. Whatever you like, just go. Just let me live my life. Let my kids go. Let the yeshiva. Let us learn. Let us live our own little community. You have your life. I have my life. And that's it. This is how our attitude is supposed to be while we are in the exile, which we're all in the exile, whether you live in Israel or in America or in the UK or in Australia or in Canada or in Zimbabwe. It doesn't make a difference. Wherever you live, if you're a Jew, you're living in the exile. We're not home, no matter where you are at home. Surely there's a benefit of living in Eretz Yisrael if you're able to do it, if you're able to have a good Torah life there, no problem. Live there. Fantastic. If you could have a better life, Torah-wise, in a different place, then that's a better place for you. Needless to say, Wherever you are, it's the exile. Although there's a merit to living in Eretz Israel, which we can never forget, still the point being is, it's not home. It's not home yet. Why? Because Mashiach is not here yet. The government is a secular government, and in many cases an anti-Torah government. There's as much or more anti-Semitism and anti-Torah in Israel as there is in any other place in the world. So Rav Wasserman says that our attitude towards the nations, towards the exile, is everything we've said. And according to these decisions, according to everything we said, the Jews acted in all times until the latter generations. This is the answer to the question of how is it that the Greeks destroyed, the Turks destroyed, the Romans destroyed, the Spaniards destroyed, the Babylonians destroyed, the Nazis destroyed. All of these civilizations that tried to destroy Am Yisrael, that were much greater than us in number, much greater than us in power, but yet they are destroyed, yet we, little nation, are still here. Literally. What's the answer? How? How is the answer? Of course you can have the easy answer, say, oh Hashem, thank you. But give me something that can tell me how is it in a practical perspective. How? We followed the instructions of the Torah and its sages of how to deal with the exile, how to deal with Esau and Ishmael. We followed it throughout all of the generations, Rav Wasserman says. This is what everybody followed until leaders, with quotation marks he put, leaders arose who refused to recognize the Torah and its counsels. This here he's talking about the Reform movement, the Enlightenment movement, the Zionism, all the other isms, all of these leaders, they came and refused to follow the Torah, but rather followed their own little puny brains and big egos. They decided to follow that instead. Who are these people? They run Jewish politics in exactly the reverse way. Says these people, these leaders that have put us in this situation, these shepherds, some of them being religious, so-called religious Jews, many of them obviously non-religious. Says these organizations are running our people, are leading our people in exactly the opposite way of what our sages and the Torah said. The exact opposite way. Torah says to be humble, to be quiet, to be out of the spotlight. What do? They're loud, they're obnoxious, they're constantly in the limelight. So much so, they built Hollywood. What's their gospel, Rav Wasserman says? The Jews must fight and make demands. Says that's their mantra. That's what they preach. So you're a Jew, you gotta fight. For what? Who am I fighting? Why am I fighting? Let me just survive. Why do I need to fight? Fight! You gotta fight. No, can't let these goyim take advantage of us. You can't let them persecute us. You can't let them do this. You can't let them do that. Look, they're anti-Semitic over here. Look, they made a cartoon of a Jew here. Look, they wrote an article against us there. Look, they have something on the store over there. You gotta fight. You gotta fight for your rights. That's their attitude. Who must we fight? Rav Wasserman says. Who do you want us to fight exactly? The strongest powers in the world? The Nazi army, the American army, the Roman army, the Greek army, the Babylonian. That's who you want us to fight? What gives? Like, did you do a census recently on the Jewish people? Did you do a double census of how many of them actually know how to fight? Needless to say, well, fight at all? Did you realize that the Chinese have 2 billion people and we're not even a rounding error? And you want us to fight there too? You realize that there's 400 million Americans, of which 200 million of them admit to being openly anti-Semitic? 200 million admit they're openly anti-Semitic. You want us to fight them? With what? With the 6 million they barely allow us to live here, and most of them being anti-Torah themselves? Out of the 6 million? Who do you want us to fight exactly? How? Because you're not saying to do with God, with a miracle, with prayers. How do you want us to fight? Rav Wasserman saying. Who is this fight? He says we must boycott them, they say. and assemble at Congress and bomb them with newspaper articles. That's the fight. That's the fight. Okay, we're not doing a business with 400 million Americans anymore. Okay, so you're bankrupt in a week. Oh, we're not going to sell anymore to China. Okay, so you're bankrupt in 2 days. Oh, we're not going to do any business with anybody that doesn't like Jewish people. Okay, so you're bankrupt in about a half hour. Like, what boycott? What boycott are you doing exactly? Where are you going with this? Where are you going with this? With this nonsense of boycotting? Oh, better yet, we're going to assemble a Congress and we're going to shoot at them. We're going to bomb them with newspaper articles. For what purpose? To bring fear and trembling into their hearts. We, little puny people, are going to scare the Goliaths of the world. With what? With newspaper articles. I'm going to write a blog. I'm going to say, look at you, Esau. You are anti-Semitic. You don't like Jewish people. You make fun of kosher. You wrote a article that made fun of the Holocaust. You're anti-Jew. And what do you actually think is going to happen? You think Esau is going to start crying over there? Boo-hoo? Oh, poor Jews. Yeah, I'm going to stop hating them? You think that Mustafa and Ahmad are going to say, you know what, Habibi, maybe we should like the Jews. Maybe we should give them more land. Maybe we should do good with them. Like, what is the thought process here exactly? You're going to shoot at them. You're going to bomb them with newspaper articles. You're going to go to the UN. The only benefit of a Jew showing up at the UN is to get YouTube views. That's it. There is no benefit ever for a Jew to ever walk into that anti-Semitic building. Why? First of all, they hate you. Second of all, they highlight how much they hate you when you appear, much more than when you don't appear. Third of all, there's no point. No one cares what you said. The only people that care about are the people that are Jewish. Therefore, you have 20 million views. All of them agree with you. The rest of the world, no one cares. But yet, every other month, there's a new YouTube video, a new viral video. Oh, look at this hero from England. Look at this hero from whatever country. Look at this hero. Look at this person. Wow, look what they said at the UN. Stop being anti-Semitic. Yeah, he's right. Stop being bad people. Yeah, he's right. Yeah, Jewish people are contributing to the world. You know what? That's a good idea. He's right. Wow. Do you see Ahmed and Mustafa and Ahmadinejad and anti-Semitic and Hitler and Haman and Nebuchadnezzar and Paro? You see them doing tshuva? You see them changing? You see anything happening at all other than anti-Semitism increasing even more after that stupid meeting? What did you think was going to happen? They're going to do tshuva? It doesn't work that way, Habibi. It doesn't work. Why? Esau Soneh L'Yaakov. It's a rule in nature. Get it through your skull. The same God that created the world put rules in it. Just like he put gravity and H2O makes water and so on and so forth. Guess what? Esau hates Yaakov. That's it. He's never going to care. He's never going to care about your little speech at the UN. Best case scenario, he'll press like on your video. But next year, he's still voting against you. He's still voting it. What? This is the way it is. HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world, not you and not Esau. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu uses Esau and Ishmael as different sticks in order to lead you to go back to where you're supposed to. What happens? The people that don't listen to the Torah eventually get to a point to having children who don't even know the Torah. And the kids who don't know the Torah don't have anything to listen to, don't have anything to acknowledge, and they actually believe deep in their hearts that by going and debating Muslims, debating atheists, debating anti-Torah, debating anti-Jews, debating everybody is a good thing. Writing articles about it, even better. It looks like you're sophisticated. Best yet, you're a professor and you make a whole thesis paper about it, a whole new finding of how statistically anti-Semitism has hurt the world and blah, 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 like anyone cares. Nothing's gonna change. Why? Change does not happen that way. But the people that do not listen to the Torah have children who do not know Torah. And those who don't know Torah don't even know that whatever they're doing is a complete waste of time and life. So they actually believe that their new video will help Jews be less hated. They believe that their new commercial or show or t-shirt or speech is going to make anti-Semitism go down slightly more. They believe in their minds that this will make a few more people love Jews, or perhaps see the truth about the Jews like they see. They believe this. That's why they can't wait for the UN to invite them so they can have their 3-4 minute speech of fame, and maybe next year they'll be the lucky one that has a video go viral talking about how everybody's anti-Semitic and they hate Jews and they hate this and they hate that. There's nothing more wasteful than that type of attitude. Nothing more wasteful of thinking that you're going to change the world with your speeches about anti-Semitism. First and foremost, you should know, Esau, Ishmael, they don't really care. You, Mr. Professor, Mr. Young Professor, Old Professor, you wrote a whole article, a thesis paper, a book, New York Times bestseller. Yeah, right. You wrote a book about how anti-Semitism is this and that, and anti-Israel is bad for the world, and Israel is great. You wrote that book. Mr. Esau, Mr. Ishmael, those people that are not so much, let's say, they're not your fans. You think they're buying that book? You think they say, oh, look at that. Professor Yaakov wrote a new thesis paper. Let's see what it's about. I have to. Ahmed, you going to read this with me? No, I read it already, Habibi, I read it. I'm Beki in Yaakov's thesis. I'm an expert in Yaakov's thesis. My enemy, I need to know everything he says. You think that's what they do? Are you that dumb or naive? Who thinks like this? What do you think the anti-Semites are doing with your new book or thesis paper or essay or write-up? Nothing! They don't even look at it! Why? It's a waste of time. They will never agree with you. Did you ever see a rabbi that knows Torah argue with the imam, would argue with the guy, with one of the leaders of the Muslims? You ever see that happen? Virtually non-existent. Why? Why is there so many more debates, even though not many, because we already destroyed them 900 years ago, when the Ramban completely destroyed the Christians in Barcelona. After that, they thought twice before they had a debate. Only today they started wanting more debate, but that's not because they actually think they're going to win. They just want to get more fans, and they figure there's a lot of ignorance that are watching the lectures. Moving on though, you're never really going to see a rabbi that knows Torah spend any time whatsoever debating an Arab Muslim leader. Never. Why? Why isn't there like a famous debate, like the Ramban had a famous debate the whole world knows about? There was even a movie made about it. But yet, there is no debate between the Muslims and the Jews. Why? Because there is no debating them. There is no debating them. In order to debate, there has to be a postulate. There has to be certain things that everyone knows it's 100% true. Everyone knows this cannot change. This is it. Now you can say, yeah, but wait a minute. Don't the Muslims believe in the Torah also? They just say that they have the Quran? No, not really. Yes, they believe that the Torah, the Old Testament, or whatever they call it over there, they believe it was given to Am Yisrael, the chosen people, at Mount Sinai. Sure, they believe that part. There's one problem though. They don't believe that the one that we have is the same one. In essence, they think all Jews are liars. Hence the reason there's no debate, there's no point. Why? For them, Akedat Yitzchak, when Kadosh Baruch Hu told Abraham to bring Yitzchak as a sacrifice, if you will, Of course, this didn't happen. It ended up being a big Kiddush Hashem, where we saw how Avraham Avinu, our forefather Avraham, was willing to sacrifice his son Yitzchak, his beloved son, his favorite son, for the sake of Hashem. But Hashem obviously doesn't want him to sacrifice his son, and therefore Yitzchak wasn't harmed. But the point being is, that whole thing, that whole story that we are still living off of, you know what the Muslims believe? They don't believe it was Yitzchak. They believe it was Ishmael. They believe that Avraham put Akedah on Ishmael. Meaning, there's no point to argue with someone that thinks that it's not Yitzchak and Akedat Yitzchak, but thinks it's Akedat Yitzchak with Ishmael. There's no arguing there. It's a waste of time. Now, if you think this is the only thing we disagree on, you're simply naive. The reality is Mustafa, Ahmad, and all of the leaders from the Muslims, Hitler, Haman, and all of the leaders of the Christians, they are not reading your Jewish book. They're not reading your Let's Stop Anti-Semitism book. Why? They like being anti-Semitic. It works for them. Sometimes they turn the volume up, sometimes they turn the volume down, but nonetheless, nothing changes. Their children grow up that way, their grandchildren grow up that way. Once in a while, a few people go off the derech and actually become Jews. But the reality is, the shoresh, the foundation, the roots stay the same. Why? Because those articles are not going to change anyone. Those bombs of the newspapers are not going to change anyone. Because Hashem is the one that runs the world. But these leaders at the time of Rav Elchanan Wasserman, and before him, and unfortunately, due to our many sins after him to this day, did not listen to a single word that I said. Quoting Rav Wasserman, quoting Gemara, quoting HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Not much opinion. Why? They didn't want to listen to the Torah. They had no interest in the Torah. They were already a generation of parents that did not care to listen to the Torah. They already got to a point where they didn't even know Torah. Needless to say, the generation that we're in, where many people don't even know how to read, even if they live in Israel. You have over 1 million children living in Eretz Yisrael do not know Shema Yisrael. When one well-known rabbi went to a public school, miraculously they let him in there to give a lecture to 400 young kids about our history, but obviously including the Tanakh. He says, who was the king of Israel named David? David, 400 kids said, Ben Gurion! They all thought Ben Gurion was the original king of Israel, not David HaMelech, David Ben Ishai. No one even knew who he was out of these kids. Public school. When a person does not follow Torah, surely his child will be less than him. And when the child is less than him, it'll eventually get to a point where either the child or the grandchild will not even know it exists. He'll just think, yeah, this is cultural. This is part of our culture. So now Rav Wasserman continues and he says, while they all think that these newspaper articles and these assemblies at Congress are going to bring fear and trembling into Esau and Ishmael, the anti-Semites' hearts, the Jewish newspapers prove by signs and wonders, he's being sarcastic here, Rav Wasserman. He's like, these Jewish newspapers prove by signs and wonders that the anti-Semites are uncultured and undemocratic. They constantly bring proofs in the newspaper. Look, these anti-Semites, look, he is doing bad things to his wife. He's doing bad things in business. He's doing bad things against Jewish people for no reason. They constantly bring in these proofs in the Jewish newspapers. Miraculously, countless proofs. They would prove the Cossack were Russian warriors, if you will. Till this day, there's about 10 million of them. But throughout the last several hundred years, they were constantly for and against their own Russian government. These Cossacks were viewed by Jewish secular Jews as the ultimate warrior, the ultimate big machine, a big war machine. And unfortunately, many of the secular Jews admired them to the point of writing about them, writing poems about them, marrying them, intermarrying, obviously. These Cossacks were vicious people. Everyone knows it. He says these Zionists, these unity type people, they end up rebuking the Cossacks. Say, no, Cossack, you're not doing good. For shame, sir. Shame on you, Mr. Cossack, they say. Shame on you. The anti-Semites, though, don't do tshuva. They don't repent. The article showed that the Cossack, the Ishmaeli, the Esau, all of these wicked anti-Semites, they're bad people. They're not democratic. They're not civilized. They're not cultured. They're not good. These Jewish newspapers are proving it week after week. It's wonder of wonders, of Wasserman says, of how many proofs they have. But yet, these anti-Semites don't repent. Do this rebuke. But nevertheless, our newspapers do not interrupt their priceless, in quotation, work. Their priceless work, which is to speak to wood and stone. He says these Jewish newspapers that are constantly covering, and these books, these so-called bestsellers before they even sold a book, these famous shows that talk about anti-Semitism, there's well-known programs and movies. They're talking to stones. They're talking to a wall. They're talking to a piece of wood. Rav Wasserman says they're so good at it, they're completely ignoring the fact that it's a wooden stone they're talking to. Yeah, but the message is for the Cossack to do tshuva. The message is for the Ishmaeli to do tshuva. The Arab, the Muslim, the ISIS member, the Antifada, Antifa, all of these organizations that hate Jews, BDS, for them to do tshuva. No, they're not even reading it. They're not even reading the article. They're not reading the book. They don't even know it exists, and they don't care, and if they saw it, it will be the first thing they throw in the garbage. Certainly, it's right to report and to comment, but it should be to ourselves. Then Rav Wasserman brings it all home. He says, I'm not saying that you shouldn't talk about anti-Semitism and how it's running rampant. I'm not saying that you shouldn't talk about how we're being mistreated. I'm not saying that you shouldn't report and discuss all of these different important subjects. But it should all be discussed to us, to our own people. Tell our own people, hey, guys, you realize there was an attack in the 2 blocks away? Hey, ladies, do you realize there was an attack 1 city away? Hey, you realize that there's a lot more difficulty for Jews to get jobs, for Jews to make a living, for Jews to survive? Do you realize this? To ourselves, in the synagogues, in the private meetings we have among ourselves. That's what you report it. For what purpose then? The reporter says, well, how could I become famous if I only report it to fellow Jews? Why would I report it to fellow Jews? I have 8 billion goyim, only 20 million Jews. If I want to get famous, want to succeed, get the message out there, I want to publicize this message to the whole world. Rav Wasserman says, no. Publish it to us. Why? It doesn't have any valuable purpose if you publish it to the goyim. If you publish it to Esau, to Ishmael, and to all of those people, it won't have any valuable purpose. What? They're not reading it. And those that are, you don't need to show it to them anyway. Why? They were already on your side to begin with. If you're going to publish these articles, if you're going to make these videos, it should be to your own neighborhood, to your own household, to your own community. Why? He says there's much to say about these various isms with which we are so abundantly blessed. Again, he's being very sarcastic. He says, look at all of these isms which he mocked earlier in his book. Zionism, socialism, nationalism, secularism, narcissism, all these isms. He says we've been blessed with all of these isms. Our writers, however, do not understand this. They don't understand that all of these isms that they're expressing in their newspaper articles, their nationalistic view, their socialist view, their democratic view, their Zionist view, all of these views that they express in their articles and today in videos and so on, they don't realize this is not the solution. Why? Because the Torah said so. The prophet Eichah, in the book of Eichah, the prophet Jeremiah, he brings a verse from Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 14. And Jeremiah says, your prophets envisioned for you vanity and foolishness, and they did not expose your sins to bring you back in repentance. They envisioned for you oracles of vanity and deception. Says that all of these writers, these professors, these leaders, these shepherds, that are in essence using their articles as bombs against Esau, as bombs against Ishmael. Says they're not getting the message. And Am Yisrael is not getting the message either. Why? Because Am Yisrael, instead of putting a ban on all of these people and completely ignoring all of these people that are not following the Torah, they've turned them into prophets. And on them it is written by the prophet Jeremiah at the time of the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash, that these messages from the prophets, these visions from the Navi is not just a prophet. Navi comes from Niv Sfatayim. Niv Sfatayim means a speaker. It says these visions from these speakers, from these authors, are all false. And they have not, why? Why is it all false? Because not a single one of them is discussing why anti-Semitism is happening. Why Am Yisrael is suffering. What's the reason? The prophet says, simple, sins. The reason why we suffer? Sins. Why the Holocaust happened? Sins. Destruction of Bet HaMikdash? Sins. Destruction of the second Bet HaMikdash? Sins. Spanish Inquisitions, pogroms, blood libels. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu bring these things to Am Yisrael? Simple answer, one word, sin. That's the reason. Not me. Prophet says it. He speaks to Hashem on a regular basis. He says these prophets, these authors and speakers that you have, they gave you these messages, they're all false. How do we know they're false? How do we know they're going in the wrong direction? Because they're not revealing to you your sin. They're not trying to bring you back to do repentance, to do tshuva. If someone is a public speaker, if somebody is going to reach an audience through a speech or a book or otherwise, if their intention is not to help you do tshuva and repent and go back to Hashem to be more righteous, whatever they said is a complete waste of time. They're not your friend, they're not your leader, they're not anything good to you. Why? Because your whole purpose of being in this world and going through all the anguish and the toil and the burden and the difficulties, the whole point of it is for you to repent, for you to do tshuva, to return to Hashem. If the message you're reading in a book, in an article, in a thesis paper, in some type of video you're watching, whatever it is, if that media is not giving you a message to do tshuva, then it's the wrong prophecy. It's the wrong message. And the prophet, the speaker, he's called Navi Sheqer, false prophet. Why? Because all of the right prophets, the righteous prophets in our Torah, as the Rambam writes in Hilchot TeShuva, all of the prophets gave the same message. What?
Shuva Yisrael ad Hashem Elokecha. Return Am Yisrael to God. Return Am Yisrael to God. That's the message of every prophet. From the beginning all the way to the last prophet. All of them had the same message. Different times, different experiences, different difficulties. But nonetheless, the same exact message. If your prophet is has a Daily Wire show, and he speaks really fast and sounds really smart, but he's not telling you to do tshuva, it's a false prophet. If your speaker is telling you that maybe we should be friends with the Arabs, we just don't understand each other. Look, me and Mustafa, we became friends even though he didn't like me in the beginning. If he's not telling you to do tshuva, like Hashem says, and his prophet said, false prophet. False prophet. If the rabbi that you're watching on some big website that has 800 speakers, if he is not telling you, you have to do tshuva, fix yourself, stop thinking that you're perfect, stop thinking that you're already in Gan Eden, stop assuming the Mashiach will save you. You have a lot of work to do. If he's not telling you a message like that, false prophet. What? That's the whole point of life. That's the whole point of the Torah. It's an instruction set to do tshuva. If he's not telling you what the whole point of the entire book is, false prophet. False. Wrong message. That's in essence what Rav Wasserman is saying so far. And he brings a verse, but now he's going to bring us some more verses. He says it's well known that at the time of the prophets, the Nevi'im, there were many false prophets. When the true prophets cried out, and it says in the prophet in Yechezkel, in Ezekiel chapter 16, verse number 2, the right prophets, the true prophets, the tzaddikim, were crying out to Hashem. Why did they cry out? Let Jerusalem know its abominations. The prophet Yechezkel, in the beginning of the 16th chapter of the book of Yechezkel, Ezekiel, gives us a message. Now I can't just give you just a small little one verse. We're going to go over a few things here to see why is Hashem calling what we did an abomination. The word of Hashem came to me, Yechezkel says, saying, Ben Adam, he calls Ezekiel son of man, Ben Adam, inform Jerusalem of her abominations. He tells, you have one job, Yechezkel. Go tell Am Yisrael, I'm disgusted with their actions. That's what abomination is. When Hashem, listen, if your husband is disgusted with how you behaved, or your wife is disgusted with how you behaved, I'm sure you're going to cry a little bit and maybe fix yourself, unless you want to get divorced. If your parents are disgusted with the way you behave, if you're a decent kid, I'm sure you're going to fix yourself. If your teacher, your Rebbe, your Rebbitzin is disgusted with the way you behave, surely if you want to pass the class, you're going to change yourself. If your boss, your manager, is disgusted with the way you behave, if you want to keep your job, of course you're going to change. If your customer can't believe he ever did business with you, he's disgusted with you and everything you're about, surely if you want to earn business, even if it's not with him, but with anybody else in the world, surely you're going to change. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us, Yechezkel, go tell Am Yisrael, I'm disgusted with them. Why? What did he do? Let's see. Kadosh Baruch Hu, I'm going to skip around the next paragraph just to highlight certain points. Says that when he found us lying in blood, on the day you were born, your umbilical cord was not cut, nor were you washed with water to smooth your skin. No eye pitied you. Nobody pitied you. Nobody cared about the Holocaust, for real. Nobody cared about the pogroms. Nobody cared about anti-Semitism. No one cared about this stuff. He says, no one pitied you. Then I passed you, and I saw you wallowing in your blood. And I said, in your blood you shall live. I said to you, in your blood you shall live. And you came to have great charm. And I covered your nakedness, and I took an oath to you, and entered into a covenant with you, the word of Lord Hashem. And you became mine. I bathed you with water and washed away your blood from upon you, and I anointed you with oil. So far we hear something really romantic, beautiful. Kadosh Baruch Hu says we were lying in blood, we were suffering, they were killing us everywhere. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, nobody else cares about you. No one has any mercy on you, only I do. And because I do, I'm going to decree that you're going to live despite the anguish, despite the blood, despite the difficulty. You're going to live. And he made a covenant with us. And he gave us clothes, and he gave us shelter, and he gave us money, and he gave us all types of beautiful things. And we started using these gifts, which gave us charm, and gave us intellect, and gave us more Nobel Prize laureates per capita than any nation in the world, and this unique intellect, and abilities, and great things. Gave us a lot of gifts because as a result of this covenant. And what happened? In verse 15 in chapter 16 he says, but you trusted in your beauty, and you became licentious because of your fame. You poured forth your harlotries upon every passerby to be his. Kadosh Baruch Hu says to us, you took all of the gifts that I gave you. You took the money that I gave you and you spent it on non-kosher food. You spend it on gambling. You built a company that's full of, immorality, lack of ethics. You used the brain that I gave you to learn Torah, and instead of that, all you do is watch sports like a Greek. Amit Yevin. You took the gifts that I gave you, the beauty that I gave you, and you, instead of harnessing it and only sharing it with your spouse, you share it with the entire world through media, through Hollywood. You're known as the Jewish actress that walks around half naked or completely. The Jewish actor that has a new wife every other month. You're known as this beautiful person that's born Jewish but has no connection. You used the gifts that I gave you against me. Hence the reason why Kadosh Baruch Hu says, I am disgusted with you. If I didn't save you, and I didn't bless you, and I didn't give you, and I didn't make you beautiful, and I didn't make you smart, and I didn't make you charming, I do nothing for you. You're on your own, you do what you want, understandable. But after the whole world wanted to murder you and left you in your own blood, I was the only one that cared for you. And not only did I care for you, I brought you back to full health. And on top of that, I made you beautiful. And I put oil on you. And I gave you clothes. And I gave you this. And I gave you that. I gave you everything. I gave you every single thing that you have, that you know of and that you don't know of. 1.5 million times the Goyim wanted to kill you. There's a prophecy that will happen at the time of Mashiach, that the Goyim are going to praise Hashem. The Goyim are going to praise Hashem for how he treated Am Yisrael, how he protected Am Yisrael. Why would the Goyim be the ones to praise Hashem for how Hashem protected Am Yisrael? Shouldn't it be the Jews that praise Hashem for protecting us? Chazal says no. Why? Only the Goyim, only the Nazis, the Ishmaeli, the Arab Muslim ISIS, all of the enemies of Am Yisrael, Only they know how many times they planned to kill us, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu foiled their plans. Only they know, and Hashem knows. The Jews don't know how many times HaKadosh Baruch Hu saved them. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, look how many times I saved you, and I bathed you, and I cooked for you, and I did everything for you. And what'd you do? You took everything that I gave you, every penny, every IQ point, every saliva drop that came out of your mouth. What'd you do? You used it against me. That's disgusting if you think about it. That's disgusting. Imagine. Your son does that to you. Your daughter does that to you. Unfortunately, some people don't have to imagine. They're actually living such a life where their kids are going against them. Unfortunately, we have to deal with some of those cases where they come to you and say, listen, I don't know what to do with my son or my daughter. They're practically enemies. Unfortunately, by the time they became enemies, it's already too late. It's already too late. But the point being is, it may be too late for them and your relationship with your son or daughter, but it's not too late for your relationship with Hashem. It's not too late for your relationship with Hashem. You can still fix yourself. You can still listen to the right message and the right messenger and not be an abomination. So while Am Yisrael was in this situation where the prophet says that Kadosh Baruch Hu calls him an abomination, the false prophets came and would call the righteous prophets, the true prophets, troublers of Israel, who bring persecution upon the house of Israel. As it says in the book of Kings 1, chapter 18, verse 17, when this Rasha Merusha, Achav, who himself was married to a Goya named Jezebel, which, if you break up the word, is fantastic. It's perfectly fitting. Jezebel, she is garbage. This woman was as evil as it gets. Murdered countless tzaddikim and prophets. And Achav became a king. Idol worshipper, son of an idol worshipper. Eliyahu Navi, Elijah the prophet, comes and rebukes him. He says, look what you're doing. Am Yisrael is going against Hashem because of you. They're worshiping an idol because of you. They're doing bad things against Hashem because of you. He's rebuking. What does Achav do? You would think Achav says, you know what, Eliyahu, I'm not so versed in the Torah. I thought it's good to worship Buddha. I thought it's not so bad to drive on Shabbat. I guess you're a rabbi, you're a prophet, you talk to Hashem all the time. Okay, so I guess you're right. Oh, I'm sorry. That didn't happen. What happened? Achav does what a lot of rabbis today do. Does what a lot of fools do. What? He says to Eliyahu Navi, why are you speaking so bad about Am Yisrael? You're saying they violate Shabbat. You're saying they drive on Shabbat. What, that makes them bad? You decided that they're bad. You're like a prosecutor against Am Yisrael. What you're saying about how Am Yisrael is sinning and how Am Yisrael doesn't keep Shabbat and they're intermarried, whatever you're saying, yeah, it's true, but you're saying it, you're like a prosecutor against Israel. This is what fools do today. Finally, somebody comes and tells people the truth, makes a video about it, writes a book about it, does all types of things to help Am Yisrael identify their abomination. Exactly what the prophets did. Finally tells people, listen, the way you're going is wrong. You're going into a one-way street to Gehinnom. I'm trying to get you to reverse and go to Gan Eden. But in order to do that, you got to change your actions. Stop driving on Shabbat. Stop being intermarried. Stop eating non-kosher. Stop being with married women that are not your wife, and so on and so forth. You have to follow the Torah. What does this local rabbi say? What does this local so-called religious friend say? Ah, no, that rabbi is too strict. He's like a prosecutor against Israel. You just stay the way you are. You're okay. Hashem loves you no matter what they tell them. These false prophets. It's not new. Achav said it. Achav said it even though it was known to the whole world. He was an idol worshiper, married to a Goya, filthy, despicable person. And Eliyahu Navi, Kodesh Kodeshim, the whole world knew he was holy. Even his enemies knew he was holy. Yet this despicable Achav has the audacity to tell Eliyahu Navi in his face, you are a prosecutor. You're the troublemaker. You're the one that's against Am Yisrael, not me. That's how much the false prophets believe their own lie. And the prophets of truth were not afraid of endangering their own lives and fulfilled the verse in Isaiah chapter 50 verse 6 that says, my body have I given to the smiters and my cheeks to that tear open, to those that tear it open. Meaning they put their lives on the line. When Eliyahu Navi responded to the king Achav, he wasn't responding saying, oh yeah, maybe we're going to have a sophisticated debate. Oh, maybe we're going to have a cordial conversation. No. You know, whatever he's responding, he's putting his life on the line as a very, very high likelihood, like 100% chance, practically, absent of a miracle, that Achav is going to have all of his people gather up and slice him to pieces, make him into a hamburger, maybe even eat him. Why? That's what they did with other prophets, even without them rebuking. Eliyahu Navi, Jeremiah, Isaiah, Yechezkel, our prophets were not afraid to tell the truth, even though they were murdered for it. Practically every one of them was murdered almost. Yechezkel over there responds telling him that they are the false prophets, that he is the false prophets. In the next verse, Eliyahu Navi says to him, not I have troubled Israel, rather you and your father's house, by your forsaking the commandments of Hashem. You're the one that's an abomination. Even though you're a king, even though you're powerful, even though you have all that stuff, doesn't make you different, doesn't make you right. You're the abomination, he tells them. You're the Mechalel Shabbat. You're the one that's causing people to go against the Torah. You're the one that's bringing Christians to a synagogue. You're the one that is bringing missionaries to a community. You're the one that's, distorting the Torah. You are the one that's advocating for people to go against Hashem. You are the prosecutor against Am Yisrael. But it's not finished there. It's not finished there. Continues and he tells them, now it's come to showdown. What's the showdown? He says, gather all of Israel to me on Mount Carmel, and also the 450 prophets of the Baal and the 400 prophets of the Asherah tree, those who eat at Jezebel's table. He says, Eliyahu Navi says to Achav, you're the prosecutor. You're causing all the damage. But the only reason why you think you're right is because you have almost 900 prophets, 900 speakers, 900 politicians, 900 rabbis, 900 fakers telling you, Achav, you're a tzaddik. By the way, make the check payable to... what does Eliyahu Navi call those people? What does Rav Wasserman call those people? He says, those prophets that eat at Jezebel's table. Those fakers that eat at Jezebel's table. What does it mean, those fakers that eat at Jezebel's table? He says, those people are not telling you the truth only because they're eating at your table. You're giving them money. You're feeding them. Therefore, they're going to tell you whatever you want. They're going to tell you whatever you want. They're not going to disagree with you on a single word. And that's what Rav Wasserman quotes here. He says, the false prophets of that period ate at Jezebel's table. Now, what's the point of a speaker? What's the point of someone that's going to have a YouTube video or speech in front of a Jewish crowd? What's the point of him? Rav Wasserman finishes this particular section with that point. The function of a true prophet was to awaken Am Yisrael from his slumber. The whole point of a prophet is to wake up Am Yisrael to do tshuva. That's the whole point. if you're going to speak to Jewish people, if you're going to speak to an audience, the whole point of the speech should be to get them to change and improve themselves in accordance with the Torah. That should be point A, B, and C of the whole speech. Whatever you want to do it, way, how, who, what, when, irrelevant. You could tell them stories, you could tell them jokes, you could tell them musar, whatever way you're doing it is fine. The strategy is not so relevant. But as long as the point is to get them to do tshuva today, not in 20 years from now. Today. Change today. How can you tell them to change today? If your whole speech is just jokes, you better include in those jokes a little bit of musar. Tell them, by the way, I'm not joking. You can't drive on Shabbat. By the way, all kidding aside, you cannot continue your intermarriage. You cannot continue being immoral in your business. You cannot continue doing things that are against the Torah. The whole point of the speech is that. What do the false prophets do? What do the false speakers do? It says the false prophets fulfilled the reverse aim. To lull Israel with sweet dreams. What do these false speakers do? Exactly what the Chazon Ish told us a couple of days ago in Yeshua about Emunah and Bitachon. He says, you see, the most critical part about learning about Bitachon, confidence in Hashem, is identifying who's the faker, who's the liar, who's the one that's teaching while not believing himself. He teaches, but he doesn't believe in what he's teaching. He thinks he has, but he really doesn't have. So the Chazon Ish already told us in his way. Rav Reuven says the same exact thing. He says the false speakers, all they tell you is dreams. They tell you, oh, you're a tzaddik, Hashem loves you, don't worry, you'll get married, you'll have kids, everything's going to be good, life's going to be good, everything is good, you'll make a lot of money. How do you know? Who says? Who said? Maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided that she's going to be single for the rest of her life. Maybe Hashem decided they're going to rent property for the rest of their life. He doesn't want them to own a house. He doesn't want them to own a fork. He wants them to rent a fork too. Who are you? What? How do you make these everything's going to be good for everybody? Show me one neighborhood that everything is good for everybody. One neighbor. Forget a community or a city or one neighborhood. One building where the life of one household where the life of everybody's always good. All these promises are delivered. The Kadosh Baruch Hu has different missions for different people. Some people have to suffer in order to prosper. Some people have to prosper, but in essence, it's in order for them to do certain things which may actually require them a little bit of suffering to get to the next point. Point being, everybody's got a different mission that Hashem is putting them on. To just promise everybody's life is going to be good and everybody's good, that's fairy tales. It's not how life really works. It's not how life really works. Truth is, the older you get, the more you see how it's not even realistic teachings. Not even realistic teachings. The more older you get, the more you see how tough life really is, whether it's for you or for the world around you, but you see it's tough. Just yesterday I got news that one of my classmates from high school died. Poor guy. Had cancer, within a matter of 2 months died. Hashem Yishmo. I'm sure somebody told him, oh, everything's good. He was actually better off teaching, listen, while you're here and it's tough and it's sometimes miserable, make the best of it. Do tshuva, so the real life that will come after cancer kills you, after something else, or whatever it is, at least that life's going to be good. That you can promise. Because that life's permanent. That life is supposed to be good, if you do good here. But if you just look for good here, most likely it's not going to be so good there. But that's the problem. The false prophets do the exact opposite of what the real prophets do. While the real prophets are there to wake up Am Yisrael from their slumber, from their delusion of thinking that Hashem owes them something, The real prophets are there to teach Am Yisrael how to do tshuva. The fake prophets do the exact opposite. They tell them, no, enjoy this world. Like Manis once said, the most important part, the most important world, the most important everything is this world. This world is the most important. We have to bring God into this world. Not Olam Haba, heaven, all that stuff. He goes, no. You don't want to die. You want to stay alive in this world. In essence, what he's telling you is because he realizes he's 100 years old, he realizes that he's closer to death than to life. So he's telling you that he's scared to die because he knows which section he's going in Gehinnom for all the nonsense that he says. He says, no, this world is most important. This world is the best. We want to bring God here, not go over there. Fake teachers will always tell you things that, unfortunately, they feel, they think, not in accordance with the Torah. Why? Why is this so-called mainstream teachings so popular? Why isn't there only 1, 2, 3, 4 liars and 1,000 honest people? Why there's most likely 1,000 liars for every 4 honest? Why? Rav Wasserman answers that. All this is clear. It's easier to swim with the current than against it. Nowadays, we have no true prophets. But false prophets, we have more than enough of. Both nationalists and internationalists that eat at Jezebel's table, who are sustained by various funds, and just as Israel has paid their fearful price of listening to these false prophets in the past, so do we today pay this penalty. Here Rav Wasserman gives us one of the scariest messages yet. He says, you see, Rabotai Yekarim, there's nothing new under the sun, as Shlomo Melech said. Nothing new under the sun. These false prophets have always been around. Followers of the false prophets, unfortunately, we've had in every generation. Punishment for those followers of the false prophets happened the same as well. Anyone that connects, follows, supports these false prophets will be punished severely. Just like it's written in the Torah. Just like it's promised in the Torah. Now what if I didn't know he was a false prophet? Well, it behooves you to know. You should do some research and verify that he's not a false prophet. Because when you go up to heaven, in the Beit Din over there, before they let you into heaven or to Gehinnom, they ask you these questions. Why did you listen to this guy even though he said things that are clearly against the Torah? Why did you listen to this woman even though she says and acts with things that are clearly against the Torah? Why did you do it? Oh, I didn't know. Oh, you didn't know? Oh, poor you. Okay, section 7. See you. Why? We gave you 70, 80, 90, 100 years to know, and you still didn't figure it out? Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense you couldn't figure it out. Why? Bepicha u'bilvavcha la'asoto. As Moshe Rabbeinu tells Am Yisrael, it's in your mouth, it's in your heart to do it. The Torah is easy. It's easy. The honesty of Torah, the truth of Torah is easy to accept. Falsehood is hard to accept. The problem is that you accepted falsehood. Why? Because it soothes your pain. What pain? The desire you have for sins. When the guy told you, no, you're good, even though you know that you're not so good according to Hashem. You drive on Shabbat, you eat non-kosher, you cheat on your wife, you cheat on your husband, you cheat on your boss, you cheat on your customers, you cheat non-stop. But somebody said you're tzaddik because you just wrote him a check for $5,000, $10,000. Yeah, see, somebody knows, somebody can really appreciate me. Somebody appreciates me. You think to yourself, in reality, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baal Talumot knows what's hidden. HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows the feelings that are in your heart and the thoughts that are in your head, and He's going to show it to you in a movie. He says, while you're pretending, I don't know, here, on that day, at that time, you knew. Why? Here's a transcript of your thoughts. Here's the vocals of your thoughts. You couldn't even hear your thoughts but I heard your thoughts, and here's how you sound. Here's what your thoughts sound like. You knew you were going against Hashem, but you like to sin. You like to sin. That's one type of sinner that's in serious trouble. You know who I feel really bad for? His son, his daughter. Why? Because when the parent doesn't know, when a parent doesn't care, he likes to sin too much, he doesn't care what the Torah says, that's one thing. But when the child is brought up into the world, and the child, he doesn't know. Why? Because his parents, since they don't care, they're not going to teach their kids to care, thereby making their kids even more ignorant than them, even more sinful than them. Hence the reason why we have young, cute, stupid kids that make videos that you would think this kid got all the gifts that a person can get in the world by a Kadosh Baruch Hu, only to use it against him. Rudy Rochman, very popular on YouTube and Facebook, cute kid, makes all types of silly videos arguing and debating with anti-Semites, many of the Muslims and other Christians and so on, telling them pretty much everything that the Zionists were trying to do with their newspaper articles. But he's doing it in a nice, friendly way, and no, achi, we should be friends, there's no reason for us to hate each other, it's just that we're ignorant of each other's history, we can appreciate each other and live united. What world do you live in, Rudy? What world do you live in? Now, you know why I never mentioned this until now? Because until now I cared less about that message. It has nothing to do with me. You think you're going to bring peace to the world. You think you're going to decrease anti-Semitism with these debates you have? B'chavod, enjoy yourself. Not my business, nor do I care. I just think personally, you're wasting your talent. Why are you wasting your talent? Because the Kadosh Baruch Hu gave you talent, give you charisma, give you ability to think, give you ability to speak. These are very valuable talents you can make a lot of good with. But what did you choose to do? You chose to do something that's going to waste it. But now, you know what? That's not the worst thing in the world. You know what's the worst thing in the world? What you did today. What you did today is the only thing that came to my attention, because I don't watch your videos. But you're going to listen to this because someone's going to show you this. What you did today was a Chilul Hashem. One of the worst possible things ever happened on the internet happened with your mouth today. Worse than most of the other messages I've talked about. Why? Because you look good as a good Jew, you act good as a decent human being, and thereby you have thousands of people following you as the model Jew, as the nice ethical boy, the cute kid, and they listen to what you say. And you know what you said today in a 3-minute video? You said that tefillin is part of a culture. And if you put on tefillin as a Jew, it's good, you connect to your culture. But if you don't, no big deal.
Unfortunately, today people try to categorize what it means to be a Jew. We've, in a way, Christianized sections of Judaism as if we were Orthodox, Conservative, and Reform, which comes straight from the church. There's no such thing as Orthodox, Conservative, Reform. A Jew is a Jew is a Jew. We're part of a family. And each Jew has their own way of practicing based on the way that they grew up, based on their conclusions, based on the point in their life. Someone who puts on tefillin or doesn't put on tefillin, it doesn't make a difference on if they're more or less Jewish. It's just the way that they connect to their culture. And every single Jew connects to their culture in a different way, and also that evolves. What worked for them 10 years ago may not work for them the same way today or in 10 years. So some people just put tefillin because they're told that they have to, and that doesn't really do anything for you. What you need to do is when you put tefillin, have an intention, have a reason, understand why, and use this ancient practice, the sacred practices that we've been transmitting and passing down for thousands of years for a positive reason and in a positive way. This is very important for our generation to understand, that it's not just about putting on tefillin, it's what it represents and how you can use it in order to make yourself a better person.
Rudy, you may be familiar with a little bit of what happened in the foundation of modern day Israel, most likely not enough, because I don't think you've ever mentioned the truth about real Zionists. You should watch some of our shiurim. But what you said about the Torah is an abomination. Why? Gemara, Masekhet Rosh HaShanah, page 17a. Open it, see what it says. It says there are certain people that get punished for going against Hashem for a year. But there are certain people that go against Hashem with their body, and thereby their punishment is eternal Gehinnom. You want to know what Gehinnom is? Watch my lecture about Gehinnom, shiur number 84. Type in Gehinnom on my YouTube page or my app. You'll see what Gehinnom means for 3.5 hours in one lecture and another few hours with a few other ones. Point being is, the Gemara, our sages say someone that sins, certain sins, can get punishment for a year. But it's a unique type of sinner that sins with their body, permanent punishment. Meaning that neshama goes to hell forever until it's completely annihilated. Maybe after 1,000,000 years or whatever time is in a place where there's no time. So the Gemara says, wow, that's a pretty severe punishment. Who are these sinners? Give us some examples. Give us some examples of someone who sins with their body. Now, if you fast forward to the Reishit Chochmah, Masekhet Gehinnom, it's going to talk about wasting seed, that's sinning with the body, being with a married woman, that's not your married woman, that's sinning with the body, and so on. But the Gemara gives a smaller example that's bigger. It's smaller because most of us don't even think it's a sin. It's bigger because once we realize how big of a sin is, you'll realize what you just did today. You know what the Gemara says? The Gemara says that a Jew that does not put on tefillin goes to Gehinnom forever until his neshama is destroyed. He has no share of the world to come. For a sin that a Kadosh Baruch Hu himself says a person goes to Gehinnom forever, you say it's a custom. And if you want to do it, you can do it. And if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. Rudy, stick to politics. Stay away from religion until you learn a little bit. Because you influence a lot of people to watch this stupid video of yours. And guess what? They may never watch another religious video for a long amount of time, maybe even ever. And they're going to rely on you when they go up to the Bet Din of Shamayim. And they're going to ask them, hey, Steve, hey, Yaakov, you are a modern Orthodox Jew from the UK. How come you didn't put on tefillin? What do you mean? My rabbi said it's not a big deal. Who's your rabbi? It's Rudy. Rudy's my rabbi. The pro-Zionist, the pro-Israel, pro-peace, pro-everything good, cute kid, bad non-kosher haircut. That one? Yeah, he told me. He's my rabbi. He told me it's no big deal to not put on tefillin. If you want to do it, you can do it. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. It's a custom. It's a custom. Even he himself says sometimes yes, sometimes no. And who knows? Because even a siddur is something that you get from a giveaway. If you're going to speak about things you know about, speak. But don't go into the Torah and start distorting it according to your likings. You know why? Because the only thing that makes you a Jew is the very same Torah that you distorted, just like the fake prophets. What are we celebrating in a few days? We're celebrating Chanukah. Why are we celebrating Chanukah? Is it because of the Sufganiyot, because we all want to get fatter like me? Why are we celebrating it? Because of Zionism? Why are we celebrating Chanukah? We're celebrating Chanukah because a few Charedim, five religious Jews went AWOL, went crazy on all of the secular Zionists of the day, the Giborim, the Mityavnim, all the people that were anti-Torah, including the Jewish people, not just the non-Jewish people. They went against them. All 5 of them beat an entire army of anti-Torah personalities. In reality, Chanukah is a celebration of the Torah. But why would they do it? Because the Torah is the only thing that makes a person Jewish or not Jewish. Not your mother. Your mother makes you qualified to be a Jew. Following the Torah is what makes you a Jew. Why? Because at Mount Sinai, a second before we got the Torah, there was no Judaism. Judaism wasn't born. Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were not Jewish. They were Israelites. They were Noahites. Judaism was only born at Mount Sinai when we got the Torah. The first time the Torah mentions the word Jew is in Megillat Esther, 1,000 years later. But the point is, when we got the Torah at Mount Sinai, that's when Judaism was born. Hence, we understand that to be a Jew, you have to obey the Torah. Not because who your mother is. Why? Because the same day that all of Am Yisrael became Jew, all of the Israelites became Jewish, so did Yitro. So did Yitro. Yitro wasn't an Israelite. In fact, he was an idol worshiper in the past, the Pope of that day. but he became a Jew. Why? He accepted the Torah. You fast forward to all of the generations, all of those Jews that followed Moshe Rabbeinu and survived and prospered and had kids. Guess what? They had to survive. Survive against all of the anti-Torah people. Survive against all of the people that wanted to destroy the Torah more than anything else in the world. And the only thing that kept all of them Jewish was the Torah, not their mother. The Torah did. Why? Because if any generation had a child that didn't follow the Torah and intermarried with a non-Jew, guess what? He stops being Jewish. His kids stop being Jewish, and so on. Why? Because the Torah says so. He himself, if he does tshuva, if his mom is a Jew, he's a Jew. But if he dies that way, if he dies intermarried, if he dies in Mechalel Shabbat, guess what? He's out of luck. He goes to Gehinnom, he gets destroyed. That's what the Torah says, not me. The reality is, when you go into the Torah world and you start speaking nonsense and call it a culture, you are insulting Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, David, Shlomo, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Rabbi Meir Bar Anes, all of the sages, all of the Rabbanim, all of the Gdolei Ador, all of the basic level Avrachim, and the little kids that are in a cheder just to stay Jewish. You want to talk about Zionism, you want to talk about Israel, you want to be peaceful with the Arabs, go be best friends with them for all I care. But don't start talking about the Torah like you know what you're talking about, calling it a custom. Because if it was a custom, you wouldn't be here. Reality is, Rabotai, this same message has to be delivered that way. A nice way is not going to get the message across, because that's what happens. In the world that we live in today, people don't get the message in a nice way. The klippah we all have on ourselves from our many sins and our many mistakes, gives us, unfortunately, a huge shell that blocks us from what the truth is. Our ego blocks it, our reputation blocks it, everything blocks it. So sometimes you have to speak in such a way where, you know what, it hurts, but if it's true, I guess maybe I could fix myself. You see, Rudy, you are not the only one. There are plenty of other people like you. You may actually have hope, much more than others, because it looks like you're a decent kid, but you were probably born to parents that don't know very much. And you are the product of the previous generation that didn't care so much. You can change, but you have to fix that video. You have to fix a lot of videos. I haven't watched your videos, and if I do, and I see others, I'll call them out too. All I'm telling you is, if you care about Am Yisrael as much as you say you do, start observing the Torah like you're supposed to. Don't talk to me about Eretz Yisrael. We have no right to the land unless we follow the Torah. That's the only right that we have. The only one that gave us a right to that land is Akadosh Baruch Hu. But Akadosh Baruch Hu gave us that right in the Torah, the very same Torah that does not call tefillin a custom. In fact, it calls it a covenant. What's a covenant? A deal. What's a deal? A deal is, if you keep it good, you'll get a lot of good stuff. You don't, no more deal. That's what a covenant is. We have Brit Milah is a covenant. Shabbat is a covenant. Tefillin is a covenant. That's why the word Shabbat, Shin, Bet, Taf, is an acronym. Shin for Shabbat, Bet for the Brit, Taf for Tefillin. A Jew has to be observing at least two of those covenants every day. So Monday through Friday, or Sunday through Friday, those are the secular days. We don't keep Shabbat, but we have two other Brits. We observe our Brit and we observe our Tefillin. Observing our Brit is not the Brit that you had when you were 8 days old and no one even asked you your opinion. Observing our Brit is not wasting seed, not being promiscuous, and not doing things that are against Hashem, homosexuality and the likes. That's keeping your Brit. You do that, you put on Tefillin, you're observing the covenant with Hashem. On Shabbat, you don't put on Tefillin. Why? Chachamim said that Tefillin is muktzeh on Shabbat. So what do you do to observe two Brits? You have Shabbat and you have the Brit Milah. You see, the last thing that the Tefillin is a custom. The last thing it is. Why? It's a deal. It's either a deal or a deal breaker. To call it to all of your audience, which Hashem only knows how many people are going to watch that god-awful video that you made, why you're not more Jewish, the amount of damage that it can cause is something that you perhaps can't even fix in a lifetime. And I promise you, the more you learn Torah, the more you realize the last thing we need is to care about what the anti-Semites think of us, what the Arabs think of us, what the Christians think of us. The last thing we need is that. The first thing we need is our Torah. Because our Torah is what makes us Jewish. That's what makes us Jewish. Not the custom. The shawarma that you eat, and the little baklava that you eat, and the little bit of shakshuka that you eat, and some salad with hummus, all that stuff, that's customs. That's customs. But guess what? Arabs eat that stuff too. That doesn't make them Jewish. That doesn't make them Jewish. Covering your hair, that doesn't make you Jewish. Why? Arabs do that too. Putting pants on and shirts on doesn't make you Jewish. Why? Many people in mankind have that too. What makes you Jewish is the Torah. But not just that your grandfather from 3,000 years ago got it. But rather that you got it. That you're observing it completely. Even if that means that you have to go against everything you've ever said until this point. That's what makes us Jewish. For 3,330 years, Am Yisrael has been fighting tooth and nail against irreligious ideas like this. Calling the Torah customs, calling the rules customs, calling the sages something that's optional for you to listen to or not. Who does this? People that never actually studied or were addicted to their desires to the point where it didn't matter if they studied or not. If a person says that he loves Am Yisrael and he loves being a Jew, he has to act accordingly. The guy that's going to tell his patients, hey, listen, everything's okay, while knowing that the patient's going to die, that's not a good doctor. That's a murderer. A good doctor is going to tell his patient, hey, I'm sorry to tell you, you have a horrible disease and you maybe have a short period of time to live. Yeah, the guy may start crying and the girl may start crying and everybody start crying, but at least they know what they're dealing with. The doctor that tells him, no, everything's okay, and the guy goes home and he dies, that's not a good doctor. That's a murderer. But what does the murderer think of himself? He thinks he's a doctor. He thinks not only he's a doctor, he thinks he's a good doctor. And that's why the Gemara in Masekhet Kiddushin says that Atov shebarofim olech legehinnom. The best of doctors goes to Gehinnom. Why would the best of doctors go to Gehinnom? Why would the best of doctors just help people? No. The best of doctors meaning he thinks he's so good, he doesn't want to tell people the truth and break their hearts. So he figures, you know what? If I tell this guy he's going to die, that's going to make him upset at me as if I did it. It's going to make him upset altogether. You know what? Let me be a good doctor and just tell him everything's okay. The Gemara says, that's not okay. That's murder. Because had you told him the truth, at least you would have known what he's dealing with, even though it's painful. You'd rather deal with the honest pain than a lie that seems painless but ends up being critical. Rabotai Yekarim, we live in a generation where there's false prophecy everywhere. That false prophecy is not one of the things that was invented by Rudy or by some of the other people that we've spoken about. That false prophecy has been something that, unfortunately, has been running rampant since the beginning. It's our responsibility to discover the truth and glue ourselves to it. No one else is responsible for that. We have to take charge. We have to learn. We have to comply. We have to do. Now, surely, you need some help. You need some teachers. You need some guides, and so on and so forth. And you need to find who's the truthful one and who's not. The way to identify who's truthful and who's not is based on the sources they give you. If their source is constantly themselves and their own ideas, very, very high likelihood that person is a false prophet. If the person gives you sources and it agrees with traditional Judaism, authentic Judaism, you may have a good chance of actually finding a good one. Now, if a person goes to a good rabbi, a good prophet, if you will, they'll be blessed. They'll learn the right thing. They go to a good rebbitzin, learn the good things. Baruch Hashem, they'll be blessed. What about if we go to a bad one? Aside from the fact that we're going to be misled, what is Hashem going to consider us? When someone is a fake prophet, when someone is a fake speaker, when someone does not have an intention or care or even a strategy of how to help Am Yisrael do tshuva, but yet they choose to speak in front of an audience, a Jewish audience nonetheless, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says such a person is a Navi Sheqer. It's a fake prophet. It's going to be persecuted in Shamayim for mistreating the gift that Hashem gave him. Hashem gave him a stage with 500 people, 1,000 people, 2,000 people every week, every day, 50, 100, 1,000,000 people every week on different media. And instead of using that stage that Hashem gave you as a gift, you are using your beauty to become a harlot. Like the Prophet was saying earlier today. Hashem will punish that speaker. Sefer Hasidim, from 800 years ago, speaks very harshly about false speakers, people that do not rebuke the public and tell them to do tshuva. But what about the people themselves, the listeners? The listeners of that false speaker, not even the ones that support him and give money, the ones that simply listen. The one that simply listen, Rabotai Yekarim, are called people that eat at Jezebel's table. That's what they're called. They eat the false prophecy. Now, anyone that's a false prophet and was wondering what happens to false prophets, we'll finish with this last point. The Rambam writes in Hilchot TeShuva Chapter 4, there are 24 deeds which hold back tshuva, meaning that the punishment that Hashem gives to a person in this world is making tshuva nearly impossible for such a person. What kind of sins earn a person such a punishment, which the Rambam calls perhaps the worst punishment there is? One before the last one, because one particular sin is Hashem removes the ability of tshuva. In this case is that it holds it back, meaning it makes it very difficult. 24 specific sins that hold back tshuva. 4 are commissions of severe sins. God will not grant a person who commits such a deed to do tshuva, to repent at all, because of the gravity of his transgression. Meaning the sin is so big, Hashem says there's going to be so much damage as a result of your video, of your act, of your bad speeches. So many people are going to go to Gehinnom for it. It's simply not right to put you in heaven. Unless you fix yourself, which is almost impossible in many cases, especially for people like Manis Friedman and other people that we've spoken about that have literally millions and millions of views of falsehood. It's virtually impossible to fix such a thing. Not only would you have to erase it, you would have to undo it in every speech, in hopes that you reach every single person you've reached in the past and listen to it. But the point being is that who's the ones that get such a punishment? The first one who causes the masses to sin. One who causes the masses to sin, Rabotai Yekarim, the Rambam paskins l'halacha, which means that in Shamayim that's what the psak is. Someone that causes the public to sin, Hashem takes away their natural ability to do tshuva and makes it very difficult. Why? They're constantly going to have false prophets telling, no, you're okay, everything's okay, you're perfect as you are, Hashem loves you as you are, look at how much good you do, look at how you donated, look at how life is going great for you. Everyone thinks that, because everything looks great today, therefore it's great. One of the best things that I think I've ever seen in my life to get a real perspective of how things really work in this world, aside from my own personal life and my own personal journey from being here to being here, and Baruch Hashem, we're better than ever today, but nonetheless, everyone that knows my personal story knows what kind of beautiful journey we've been on, at least the one that I tell you about. But one of the best things, aside from that, one of the best Musar lessons I ever saw in my life was seeing a short video about bodybuilders after they retired. Now this may sound odd to some of you. I don't necessarily recommend for anybody to watch this. But To me, it was a Musar lesson. Why? As a young kid, I used to lift weights. I was very strong. And, when you're young, you're 17, 18 years old, you can lift a half a house on your head. You figure, I'm always going to be this way. And even if I can't lift 800 pounds anymore, I'll be able to play with 200, 300 always. Never in your wildest dreams do you think things will change so much. When I saw this video, I saw these people that were gladiators, or at least they looked like. They had muscles that were the size of people. The muscle was the size of another person. Each person was 300, 350 pounds of solid muscle. Every little part of their body was carved like it was a drawing. And they were on shows, which is, again, not recommended to watch. It's not modest, it's not good. But what's actually good, what was good for me at that point, was to see what happened to them after they retired, after they stopped juicing and stopped with all the garbage that they put into their body that made them look like everything was good. Disaster. Most of these people look worse than someone that never worked out a day in their life. In fact, some of them have become disabled. Some of them died. Some of them lost their mind. Same thing happened with some people that I know from the past that were athletes. As soon as their 3, 4, 5-year career of making millions of dollars was over, literally their life turned for the worse. Now, why do I tell you this? Because while they were all winning, while we were all winning, while we were all printing money, all building muscles, we all looked good. We all looked like we were running the world. We all looked like everything was going for us, like it was never going to end. You were always going to win. You were always going to look good. You were always going to feel good. No one in their right mind ever saw themselves 10, 15, 20 years out looking like this old man, missing teeth, crippled, can't move, barely wants to live, needless to say, barely alive. No one ever saw themselves. Why? It looked like you were winning. You got 100 million views and everyone liked you today. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says this. All of that looks is the Satan tempting you to continue in this wrong way. Why? It looks good today. The Torah says, forget about what looks good today. That's temporary. It's temporary. A week, a year, couple of years, 10 years, 50 years even, let's say. Temporary. If you don't change your way, you'll be in such a bad scenario, you're going to wish you were one of those retired bodybuilders that looks worse than everybody else. You see, Rabotai, this world is temporary. Whatever possessions you have in this world, however much or however little, temporary. The only thing that's permanent is the Torah that you fulfill. The Torah that you know and the Torah that you fulfill. That's the only thing that's permanent. You fulfill the Torah by learning it, Chazaku Baruch. You fulfill the Torah by giving tzedakah, Chazaku Baruch. You fulfill the Torah by continuously teaching and acquiring as much knowledge as possible, Chazaku Baruch. But if you ignore it, if you desecrate it, if you simply don't care for it, that is not Baruch. It's Chazak, but it's not Baruch. But it's Chazak in a bad way. It's Chazak, it's strong in a bad way. It's a strong punishment that the person is bringing themselves. And that punishment is not just in the eternal world. It also starts here. And that's what I saw in that video. I saw that those people, they looked literally like statues at some point in their life. No one in their right mind ever thought that that's going to be over. They looked so perfect, you never thought it's even possible for that person to look like a regular person. Only to find out that literally within a few years, less than a handful of years, many of them deteriorated to a point where if you looked at them, you think they're sick. You think that there's something wrong with them, and for sure, if they show you their bodybuilding picture, you don't believe it's them. It's like, oh yeah, it's probably your brother. Yeah, it's probably your cousin. It's not you. There's no way that that and you is the same thing. Just like when you look at some athlete's bank account, before he started, he had nothing. After he made $100 million, wow, can't believe you went from that. Great for you. But then 4 or 5 years after retirement, he's worse than what he was before he started. You're like, wait, you went from $100 million to negative $20 million and you're pretty much never going to make money again? How is that even possible? Even if you do it on purpose. HaKadosh Baruch Hu works in extraordinary ways. And a person that does not acknowledge that in their life will suffer so much in this life. it's simply not worth living. Please, don't insult the Torah. Don't ignore the Torah. Look into it, learn it, acknowledge it. Most importantly, follow it. The best thing that can happen out of that, you end up going to Gan Eden. The worst thing, you end up going to Gan Eden. Baruch Adonai L'olam. Amen v'amen.